Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Comic Corner. Today I am your host TJ, aka Fat Thor, and I am joined by a very special guest. You may know him as the writer of the recent title Armored, actually debut issue for one and only Michael Schwartz. Michael, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And do you prefer to be called Fat Thor or TJ? What do we?
Either or is completely fine. People ask me this all the time. Some people think I'll take offense to it, but no, most people in the comic world and online mostly know me as Fat Thor. So that Fat Thor is completely fine. And especially too, our editor-in-chief, people who watching this that are familiar with the channel will know is also named TJ. So It also helps in those situations when we're both on screen together. But yeah, either one is fine, my friend.
Cool. All right.
So you could just call me Bearded Idiot if you want. It doesn't matter to me. We're here for you today, my friend. We're not here for me. And speaking of you, so we are here to talk about Armored. But before we get to that, we like to do a little comic origin type of story before we start. I'm sure that you've done that plenty of times on plenty of other shows. And to start it off, so I saw that you talk about how you grew up in comic shops, basically. Your dad took you to comic shop almost every week, read you comics. You talk a lot about the Stan Lee stuff, like Fantastic Four. You also mentioned, which I thought was just so awesome, that your dad actually read you Amazing Fantasy 15 all the way through to Spider-Man 100, which, I mean, shouts out to your dad, man. What an awesome dad. That's so cool. But I'm curious with all of that, like I said, you talk a lot about the Stan Lee stuff, but was there a certain property or maybe issue that you can you close your eyes and you can remember that moment, oh man, comics are awesome. Maybe it was the Fantastic Four really spoke to you. What could you remember one of those specific maybe titles or franchises?
I feel like there were multiple points throughout reading Spider-Man that just stand out to me. When it's revealed that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin was pivotal. The one issue that really stuck out to me, and I'm sure it influenced Armored to some degree, was Amazing Spider-Man Annual 5. I think it's 5 when there's a little bit of backstory to his parents and how there's this mystery.
Yes,
how they were secret agents and stuff. That in particular kind of blew me away. I was like, I need more of this. And that's why when they were adapting that kind of in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, people were no one really loved the Andrew Garfield movies, but I was like, I'm so in for this.
Yes, let's go.
Exactly. Yeah, there's that, there's even that Fantastic Four issue. I think it's this monster, the one where things on the cover. That
oh yes, classic cover.
Yeah, the coming of Galactus, all those issues in particular really stuck out to me and really made me a comic fan as a young kid. And he eventually gave me my own pull list at our local comic shop, and I think I put on the list Incredible Hulk and Silver Surfer to start out with. Those
great titles.
It was the Dale Keown Incredible Hulk, and I think it would have been Silver Surfer around issue 50, the foil embossed cover. That it would have been around there. I think. I just know that issue in particular. I remember asking my dad for Mylar because I was like, this is going to be worth as much as your Amazing Fantasy 15. It's not.
Well, maybe one day, man. You never know. You just gotta wait it out. But I absolutely love that so much. I feel like it's kind of rare to have not necessarily supportive parents. Hopefully your parents are supportive, but someone so into the medium as well, and to kind of pass that off to you. I feel like a lot of times love of comics come from kind of fringe interest, and you kind of develop it on your own. So I absolutely just love that story. And again, just getting the story of you getting into comics. And again, I mean, fantastic issues to really jump the ball. There's a reason they're classics for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, I still go back and read. You shouted out the perfect ones, Coming of Galactus, all that stuff, just like for inspiration, because again, they're classics for a reason, right?
Totally. Yeah.
And something else I wanted to talk about really quickly before we get on to some more comic book talk is you're also a big horror fan, I know.
Mhm.
And you also include some of that in Armored. So I'm also curious about your horror origin story as well. Can you remember like where that love of horror developed? Was it like a specific movie or something that really, kickstarted that?
Well, that again was very young age. I think by the age of 5, I had seen Monster Squad, The Gate, Troll, and some other like kind of kid-friendly horror. And I think I was turning 6 or was 6, and I was like, I need more. I need to see something else. Show me Poltergeist. And I begged my dad. My dad was at the time managing a chain of video stores in the area I grew up called Cambridge. It's Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo. It's in Canada. And he was managing this chain, and so he was always bringing home movies and like basically pirating them, or like keep buying the tape from the store for really cheap. And I begged him to watch the Poltergeist, and I think he had a talk with my mom and basically said, listen, let's show him Poltergeist. I'll scare the shit out of him. And then that's it. He'll be so done with this horror stuff. Yeah. And I think that year I dressed up as Dracula for Halloween. Like I was all in.
This completely backfired.
It completely backfired. Like I was a bit scared, like when the guy's face melts off and stuff. After that, I was like, you can't stop me now. You've completely like you've ruined me, Dad. You've actually made me more obsessed now. And I remember even as as I was growing, there were certain movies where he'd be like, you can watch this one, you can't watch that one. Like I remember him and my mom rented Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I was furious that they didn't let me watch it with them. So I had my friend Steve over for a sleepover, and we turned on the TV and Creepshow was on, and I was like, suckers, Creepshow is on. And we watched all of Creepshow and they had no clue. Meanwhile, like I love Creepshow way more than the Dracula movie, even though I love it too. But it just kept going from there. It was like, I need to see something scarier. I need to go more. And it was like Exorcist, Freddy's, Jason's. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All the good stuff, and just snowball and snowball.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. I'm big. I haven't been as much on top of the horror stuff lately. Like I haven't, that Long Legs I haven't caught yet. But yeah, I was the same way, Freddy and Jason, Michael Myers, like, all that stuff. So we are two of the same mind, my friend. And speaking of things snowballing, so again, we talk about how you kind of started off with the early Stan Lee, Jack Kirby kind of stuff. But then moving forward, you got really into Jeff Johns. Specifically, you talk about the Flash run, and you also talk about how Jeff was like a major influence on not only starting to write comics, but also your early career in screenwriting as well. So I'm just curious, what are some of the kind of things about Jeff Johns' writing that really stuck out to you, and not only stuck out to you, but things that you wanted to incorporate into your own creative work? Like, again, it started off as screenwriting, but eventually came into comics.
Well, like I should step back just a little bit before Jeff, because like I think those in the early 90s, like I was so into X-Men and Spider-Man by McFarlane and Jim Lee, but once they left for Image, I was all in on Image. Like I felt like I'm like 10, I'm like so cool, I like Image, superheroes suck, and I think I was only collecting Spawn and like Hellboy and a few other titles into the late 90s, and then the early 2000s. My dad was still pulling me like those two titles. That was it. And I was feeling super nostalgic for the Flash TV show. And I saw a Flash comic on the shelf, and it had the Scott Collins artwork on it. And I was just like, this looks so awesome. This looks like vibrant. This looks great. I picked it up. I started reading that, and I was like, this is so good. This is like it felt like story moved. Like it felt like so much story in a single issue. and he kind of brought me back into superheroes. Like at the early 2000s, like by 2003, I was like getting everything DC. I was like, I have to have it all. Like, you know, the Kevin Smith Quiver run on Green Arrow. I was just getting into all of it. And then I was also in film school at the time, and there was like, I didn't feel like I was a writer in any ways. I was like, I'm a director, I'm this, I want to be that. You know, everyone wants to be a director when they go to film school. And there was hit a point where I was like, I think I'm a storyteller. I don't know if I'm like a writer, but I feel like I could be a storyteller. And I started kind of just being inspired by how he wrote, and tried to incorporate that into short films or whatever. I don't know what it was. It was like through osmosis. I felt like the more I read, I was like, I can do it too.
This really spoke to you.
Yeah, it's hard to even put into words sometimes how much it spoke to me. Just not just Jeff's work, but that whole era of DC from 2003 to 2010, like really, really was influential on like my writing. Like I was always pitching TV shows and stuff at that time, and I was always trying to like get a lot of story in there. And he's like a master of you know, the ending of an issue, like ending on an awesome cliffhanger. And I love TV shows that do that too. And so there was some synergy, I felt like. Anyways, yeah, when I got to the time to write a script for a comic for Armored, I spent so much time breaking down all of his first issues. And not just his, like I looked at Tom King's stuff. I looked at some other writers, Scott Snyder's, but Jeff's is just something about how he paces his issues. I was curious about. I was like the total nerd and like created an Excel doc trying to understand what he was doing.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you about that too, because I am a super nerd just like you, and I've done stuff like that too. And I saw you talking about, like you said, you put some of their work into like Excel to see the kind of patterns and nuances of their storytelling. And I just absolutely love that, because like I said, I'm a super nerd and I would totally do something like that. So I wanted to ask, with that, what were some of the things that you picked up when you did kind of actually analyze the scripting and, you know, the way that they pace out the issue? What were some of the things that you found? And not only that, but was there anything that you found that kind of surprised you, that you know, as you were going through that, you learned something, you were like, oh, wow, I never, you know, thought of it that way, or, you know, anything of that nature?
Yeah. Okay. So what's interesting is that, you know, I'm a feature film screenwriter. I primarily write feature films. I've created a ton of TV shows that haven't been made, that I've pitched or I've developed with companies. But features is where my like talents lie, and structuring a movie is like I can structure a movie like with my eyes closed. Like I feel like today I was in a meeting and someone was like, well, I don't understand, what would the middle of the movie be? And I was just like, the middle's this. Like it took like seconds. With the comic, I was like, well, I won't write it like a movie. I'm going to write it like a TV show. I'm going to do this. But then I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like, how many scenes are there in a comic? Like, that also is what interested me, is like, how many scenes does something have? Like, I noticed Jeff's books, at least the first issue, tend to have like upwards. Obviously, some have a lot less. It felt like I think like 8 scenes or something. Like, I noticed it's sparse. There's not a lot of scenes, but there's a lot of story packed into those. You're understanding who the character is. The other thing I noticed is there, he tends to have like a midpoint kind of like twist, or I don't want to, it's possible that it's the inciting incident or something. And I liked how he did it, because in a movie, I think the natural thing that a lot of comic book writers, or at least I've noticed, is they don't really tell you what the series is about until that final page. And I really didn't want to do that. I wanted you to know by the middle of this book, this is about a boy who finds a suit of armor and it's haunted by a ghost. And I noticed that his books did that. Like, I think it's Geiger. I got to go back. I was looking at Geiger 1 because it had come out at the time, the first volume. And it was like, you know who this character is and kind of who, I think it was who the villain was pretty early on. And then there's a twist at the end. So it just felt like there's stuff happening. There's a lot crammed into such a small amount of scenes, and I really felt like I was reading so many comics that cost so much money. A single issue costs even. I sell
Yeah.
Kickstarter copies for like $10, but like the even on the stands buying them for $5, it's a lot of money. And I'm like, you better give me my money's worth, right? So like
Yeah.
I was reading books where I was like, it's one scene. This writer has written one scene that takes place over the course of an issue. Like you couldn't have given me any more.
Yeah. Come on.
So yeah, I think it was like a mixture of things, understanding how Jeff structured things, but also understanding what I liked in comics, what I didn't like, really inspired this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what it's all about, is kind of adding your own voice. And I feel like not only adding your own voice, but when you jump into comics, it's because, at least even on a subconscious level, it's because you want to add something that you're not getting in either big two or indies or whatnot. Yep. And I wanted to ask you, so we talk about this a little bit already, but you went to film school and you found yourself in screenwriting, eventually found yourself doing some VFX, which you have some pretty great stuff under your belt, my friend. R.L. Stine Zombie Town, No Malone. Something that I thought was really cool is I saw you talking about that you actually worked on one of the creatures in the Percy Jackson series, the Siren. You had a hand in helping develop. So I wanted to, and you also said too that a lot of your the screenwriting stuff was actually kind of editing and helping other people's script, like not your original ideas. So again, kind of with the Jeff Johns stuff, with your background in the screenwriting and then eventually in VFX, what were some of the things that you learned during that process that you've now taken over into the comic realm?
Yeah, like so like with visual effects, like I have to say, like I am just a production manager. Like a production manager, it's an important job, but I am not like physically building the creature or anything. But I am working with everyone.
You're involved.
I'm more involved than anyone. That's what's funny. I just don't touch the actual computer to create it. I have to deal with all the artists and make sure they're all aligned. I'm in every meeting. And I think that was invaluable, like working with different visual effects artists, right? And how they interpret the work of the different artists who, you'll have like a modeler who builds like the model of a creature, and the VFX artist has to give their notes to them. And it's like, I think I've learned a lot as to which VFX artists or VFX supervisors are really good in, giving feedback. Like there's a point where you can give too much feedback. Sometimes you have to let the artists kind of breathe and let them bring their interpretation and kind of accept it. I think there was a lot of that, like early on in Armored. I think, I'm sure Ishmael would have been frustrated. Ishmael's the artist on Armored, with me, giving him too many notes or whatever. Over time, I've had to he knows what he's doing. I need to trust that. And I think, working in film with different directors as well, like in animation, I've just learned a lot through just being around really good directors. Yeah.
Absolutely. We talk about all the time, the power of collaboration and trusting your collaborators to produce the best product, and not necessarily, it's not necessarily my idea, it's the idea, and everyone working towards that idea. And so I absolutely love that. And like you said, I think that is the perfect decision because Ishmael is killing it on this book. I absolutely love the art. It's very unique, but it fits the book, I think, perfectly. Like the tone of the book, it just fits like a glove, and I absolutely love it. So let's get into Armored, because like I said, I really love this book. I'm super excited to see where it goes. Currently, we got 2 issues out right now, and something that I thought was super interesting was when you were talking about Armor, you said that this was, so again, you have a very lucrative background in movie, television, and you said that this idea for Armored, you always wanted it to be a comic book, and that it, like, you wanted it to be told in the comic book format. So I'm just wondering, can you expand on that a little bit and why you thought this story in particular had to be told within the comic book medium?
Well, like I think I had batted the idea around a lot as like, oh, it could be a movie or it could be this. And early on, it was just suit of armor with Ghost that acts like the genie from Aladdin. That was kind of the small, just the bud of an idea I had,
Mhm.
and it was always like, oh, what could it be? What could it be? And at one point, I pitched it and to I was working for an animation studio, and I just wrote a one page, and I pitched it to the producers that were working with Jackie Chan's company,
Mhm.
and it was just a very basic idea. And what's so funny is that idea that I pitched is actually issue 6. You're gonna see that story I
Oh,
pitched
no
in
way.
issue 6. So, but what for years it just didn't feel right. Like it wasn't just that like it's really hard to get things made in Canada like on a big budget.
Mhm.
This would obviously be a huge budget. Um, but also it was really hard making it work. Like it didn't feel like a movie, it didn't feel like a TV show. And then at a certain point, which I've gone into many different times, but like I had all my comics stolen, and then I eventually like I started collecting again after being super depressed about losing them, and
Dude,
then
you'd
I,
be I don't know. You would not see me for a while, dude. I would be just distraught. I am so sorry that happened to you, by the way.
yeah,
That's
it was
absolutely
pretty
awful.
devastating. But reading so many comics, it was kind of like just like something a light bulb went off where I was like,
Mhm.
oh my god, it's meant to be a comic. Like it just felt comic booky. Like
Mhm.
everything about it. Like it feels like there's super heroics. There's horror. I can put everything into it. And I can get what I want. Like I hired an editor and he gives me notes, but he doesn't give me like, oh, I don't like this character. It's more like, let's fix this. Like, let's fix things. In film, everyone thinks they're a writer. Everyone thinks they know what's best, or they know more than the director or the writer. In this, it's like, I'm paying for everything. It's my story. We're doing it. So that I really liked that, and I really wanted to finally have like a story that was purely mine. Like it was like, and as we go on, Ishmael comes up with stuff that I incorporate into the story, or like something my editor will say, or even like Jay Lee, his cover has inspired something that happens in issue 7. Um, so it's just interesting. Uh, yeah, I don't. It's again another intangible thing I can't put into words. Where I was like, this has to be a comic. It
Yeah.
absolutely has to be. And I've been saying that since I started like writing the script. Yeah,
Just the lightning struck.
the
And I
lightning
think that
struck. Yeah.
I absolutely agree that certain stories I think just lend themselves to the comic book format. And I think Armored is a perfect example of that because you are playing with a lot of different tones in this book. We got some fantasy going on,
Mhm.
we got adventure, we also have a little mystery going on as well as our main character kind of is going through his new family and all of that. So before we get into our main character, because I want to talk a little bit about Andy, but I also wanted to ask you how do you approach balancing those sort of tones and making sure it's not just one or the other, like it's not strictly adventure, it's not strictly do you ever find yourself feeling like you need to tone back on some of them so there is that balance?
No, I think it just
Mhm.
what's on the page is just what came out.
Yeah.
I've never like censored myself in that way.
Mhm.
Um, and I like to go different places. You'll see it by like issue 4. There's a lot more horror, but there's also a lot more action. Like in the first issue, there's not a lot of action. Issue 2, I threw in all the action. Then issue 3, the mystery picks up. Like I'm a huge fan of any TV show that has mystery in it. I'm a huge fan of when there's mystery in a comic book. Like that just I get super excited. That's the stuff that really gets me going. Like I'm reading
Yeah.
Redcoat right now, and Redcoat had there's so many like what's this? What's it? Like the guessing is part of the fun. Like
Mhm.
did you watch
Agreed.
Lost at all?
Oh, dude, yes. I was upset. The numbers,
Like everything.
I damn near drove myself crazy with those numbers, my friend. I was
Yeah.
all in.
See, it was like watching Lost, reading Jeff Johns comics, all of that. This is a culmination of that. I really
Mhm.
believe so. Like it really is just everything just I just took it up, ate it, spit it out. Yeah, I to answer your question, I don't know how much. I'm just out to tell a good story, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. And it's especially to tell Andy's story well, and hopefully people, hopefully it resonates with people.
100%. And I, like you said, I 100% agree. I am all in on the conspiracy theories, the mysteries. I do a lot of breakdowns where I throw out crazy theories all the time. So I am 100% with you, my friend. And I really like the setup that you have for this mystery in this book. And most of that, like we talked about, revolves around our main character, Andy. So Andy is an orphan who lost his parents, but they went missing, and he is obsessed with finding his parents. And funny enough, not funny, but coincidentally, the new family that adopts him has a missing son. So he kind of gets thrust into this other mystery as he's trying to find out his own mystery. So I want to ask you, not necessarily where did the idea of Andy come from, but what were some of the kind of key character aspects that you wanted to portray with Andy as he's kind of unveiling this mystery? And obviously we already, I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but he discovers this armor that kind of has some implications that he could be a little bit more important than he thinks of himself. So again, just kind of, some of the core aspects of Andy that you really wanted to put into this character for this adventure.
Well, I knew going into it, like the way I approach like most of my movies is I'm always like, well, if this movie's about, a certain thing, what does that thing mean, like on a metaphorical level? And so like when I wrote Armored, I had to think about a character and like, what did the armor mean to him? And I always saw like, this is a child that's gone through some very traumatic things, and I always saw it as, he's put up a wall. He's been passed around from foster home to foster home. He never ever settles. He's constantly obsessed with what happened to his parents. That's the one thing that you find out in the first issue, is that his parents just went missing one night. And that's been his 2 years, is obsessing over that and not being able to move on, settle, or anything. And in a way, when he's given the armor, it is sort of a physical manifestation of that wall he's put up. And you'll kind of see he's tested like throughout the book, as far as like, will he or won't he remove that wall and integrate himself into this new family? Will the armor always be there for him? These are things that he'll be tested with. So that's kind of like how I saw Andy, is like, this is a character that needs to get over this loss. He needs to stop doing the whole reason he's trying to figure out the mystery as to what happened to his adoptive parents' son, is because he's so obsessed with his own mystery. He's like, oh, I'm going to try and solve this one too now. He's a bit of like a detective, right? He's a 13-year-old detective.
Yeah.
13 going on 14. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And I really like the character of Andy. I like immediately kind of got invested with this kid. I'm a personal sucker for the kind of reluctant hero. Again, someone who doesn't take much worth in themselves, but turns out to be, someone of importance, or, has some kind of destiny like that. And so I'm absolutely eating this up. And I'm also a super big fantasy nerd as well. So the whole fantasy aspect, I'm all like, the fact that it's a suit of armor and like a badass looking one at that, I'm just completely in on that. We got some creatures. We're introduced to a creature in the first issue. And I wanted to ask, with the fantasy elements of this, I also saw that you mentioned that going off of, that kind of lightning bolt moment of, oh, this has to be a comic. You also mentioned that you thought that the world was too big to be a TV show or movie or whatnot. So I'm curious, what was some of the world building that went into this armor? I know that we're probably going to get into some of that as issues unfold, so no spoilers or anything like that, but just like the suit of armor and Sir William, like do you have like story for all of that backstory, or is it more of fill it in as you go, as you need it, or you have like a whole Bible packed away?
Okay, so dealing with fantasy, I love fantasy. Like I like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter kind of stuff. But to me, Star Wars has always been like a huge part of my life.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure. Like I really enjoyed Episode 7, but then when Episode 8 came out, I was very disappointed because I thought it lost the mystery element of Star Wars. Like when you watch Star Wars, you're like, the first, Episode 4, you're like, who's Darth Vader? What did you as the viewer are like, what could have happened to this guy? Why is he in the suit? And then you find out in the next episode it's Luke's father, and you're like, how did that happen? There's all these mysteries. And then like George Lucas, he filled in a lot of those mysteries when he made it. But then I thought with Episode 7, they established new mysteries, and I went crazy like I did with Lost, being like, what could it mean? Who's Snoke? And then it was like, oh, Snoke's no one, he's dead now, and we're just gonna have a big battle.
I felt very similar, my friend. Yeah.
I was disappointed. Like I think Rian Johnson's a fantastic filmmaker. There's some beautiful moments in that, but I felt like it was missing that. And I think with Armored, there's so many mysteries, but I am the type of person that's like, I have to know the plan. And it was clear with Star Wars, there was no plan at all. And they've said there was no plan. And to me, I know exactly how this Armored was created. I know where it comes from. I'll tell you this. At the end of issue 5, the story Andy's story, as far as like what we've introduced, is pretty much wrapped up, except for a few mysteries are still left hanging, because I want mysteries to continue. It's like an onion, you're just going to keep peeling back. But the final page opens it up to a whole new story. But Andy's a part of it. He's still the protagonist, but it's a whole new story. But it also opens, like, I want people to read that page and be like, what? How? And so you'll see how it opens up. But then I haven't spoken about it a lot, but I do a podcast called Wizards, the Podcast Guide to Comics, where we examine different issues of Wizards, basically in sequential order. Like we're on issue 95. But one of the things Wizard used to do was do these half issues, right? You can mail in, get a half issue. And so we're doing a half issue of Armored. Me and the guys that I do the podcast with. And you're going to see the final page of the half issue. It's just a small half issue with a bunch of bonus content people will be able to buy just online. You're going to see there is some like little panels that show you so much more to what this world is. And it's little like, I want people to be like, what is it? Is that? What is this? And there's like, I have it all mapped out. And I've told other people this. It could end in 20 issues. I could wrap this up really quick. I don't think it would be as good necessarily. Maybe it would be fine. I would love to tell it in 50. I'd love to tell this story in 50 issues. 100 would be even better because I could do even crazier things.
Hell yeah, dude. I love that so much. Like I said, two of the same mind, you and me, because I am, like I said, love little Easter eggs, little, mysteries, following the threads, making theory. Like I live for that stuff. Literally, I live for that stuff. So that just makes me even more excited to just dive more into this world of Armored. And just based off how you're talking about it, there's so much to explore.
Yeah. But I'm also like, I don't know if you're like this as a viewer or a reader. Like, I also hate mysteries that just get dragged out. Like, when you read issue 2, you will find out within a few pages what that monster is from issue 1. Like, that is the first. I want to reveal an answer to little mysteries constantly. I don't want people to be like, give me an answer to something, please. Like Lost was a bit annoying in that
Dude,
sense.
I was gonna say it's funny that you say that because I mean, people probably call it this as well, but like I just thought of this a long time ago, and I've always used it for the term of like you just said, mysteries that don't really go anywhere or are just kind of dragged out too long. I
Yeah,
always call it the lost problem. Like
the
if it's
Lost.
if a show has it, like I say, it suffers from the lost problem. So it's very funny that you mentioned that because yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's a certain kind of lifespan for a mystery to be
Mhm.
dangled. And if you are going to be dangling it for a long time, there needs to be certain reveals and, to keep me on the trail, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes I think that some people get a little too caught up in trying to keep people guessing that it just kind of gets lost. So,
Especially if it's the protagonist's central goal. Like
mhm.
if the character is after an answer for one thing and you just drag that thing out and the character's not has no other goals, it can get tedious.
Yeah, and I can think of a million examples. I think Star Wars was a great one because again, being someone who's very into like the theories and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it was exactly the same. Like, who is Snoke? What is going on? What is that? And I will say, after like now it's been out for so long, and like I've reflected on it, I like it for what it is.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, again, I never thought it was bad, but I was just like very disappointed. Like you said, I was like
I was just
all of
disappointed.
these
Yeah.
things that I was like theorizing of, and like I had all these things, like I was like ready to go, and then it was just like, yep, this is all nothing. And I'm like, oh great, dude, I just wasted like 8 months of my life
That
obsessing over this.
that's the issue is we're the type of people that will literally go on message boards and see what do maybe they have the answer, right?
Yeah,
Like
no,
I
literally.
wasted
I'm a freaking
hours.
psycho, dude, when it comes to this stuff.
I remember my wife and I like literally doing like charts for Lost or looking on Lostpedia or whatever, being like, oh, we got
Mhm.
to figure it out. And then when that show Dark came out, did you ever watch Dark?
Dude, yes, man.
That
Yes, you
that
are
is
me and you, dude. Yes, come on. Yeah.
Dark is like a perfect mystery show because it gives answers. It was the first time I didn't, there was a whole website that was like connecting dots for you. It was the first time I didn't feel like I needed it. Like I was like,
Mhm.
they're telling me everything. I don't think I need this because it's like they're giving me answers as we go. Finally, they
Yeah.
solved the lost problem right there.
Yeah, they did. And they kept it, not only was it a long form mystery, but they were able to keep me engaged all throughout. Like you said, they reveal things in a great sequence to where, you don't get the full picture, but you're satisfied as you keep going. And I think that kind of satisfaction level of it is very important to keeping someone interested and engaged in that mystery.
Yeah,
And going off of kind of keeping mysteries and conspiracies and Easter eggs and stuff, something you talk about too, and that I really loved about this first issue in particular, is you talk about the idea of cliffhangers, and like we just talked about, leaving threads open and all that sort of stuff. And I thought you had a really great cliffhanger in the first issue, and I wanted to ask you about it because I thought it was also very smart as well. And I don't want to, the issue's been out for a little bit, so hopefully you've all picked
yeah,
up the issue. But in case you haven't picked up the issue, I don't want to spoil too much. But at like the very end of the issue, you have one of our Andy opens the door, and one of the monsters are there.
yeah.
And in my mind, like that's a great cliffhanger. Like the end of the issue right there, that's a good cliffhanger. But then you took it a couple panels further, and I think that played even better to really kind of amp up the excitement and like really leave you with something to chew on. So again, I just want to ask, like, how do you approach kind of going about the cliffhangers? And again, is that kind of a, how do I want to say, a more formulaic thing of, oh, I need one here, I need one here, or again, it just kind of comes out from the page, like
I
as you're
know
writing it.
I know I want one. I have to
Hmm.
admit that. Like I love that structure. Like to me, that's comic book structure. Like the best comic books end on something where you're like, I want issue two. I have to say, again, this just could be me because I'm the writer. It's actually my least favorite final page of all of the 5 issues of Armored that are like fully drawn, and it's only because, like, I think I like it because it bookends the beginning, right?
Mhm.
It starts with that monster, ends with that monster. That was the goal of that one. I was like, I think it works in that sense, but to me, I prefer it if it ends on pushing story.
Mhm.
I prefer to push story. It kind of does that, I guess, where you're like, well, is he dead? But
Yeah. Well, I would
uh,
say it worked for me. So if
that
you're
it
telling
works
me that
for everyone.
it's
Yeah.
your least favorite of the 5, like I am just jumping out of my seat for the other 5 of them because, like I said, I thought that was really great.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It's kind of Batman, 60s Batman ending. Like,
Mhm.
tune in next week, but
Yep.
you'll see the next 4 issues, the final page. It
Mhm.
it propels story into a new area.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I'm purposely doing that. I'll probably always do that to some degree. Like, I'm working on another series as well that's I'm self-funding with my wife. We co-wrote it,
Wow.
but it's also, I feel like the final pages are like, well, what's gonna happen? Like, it's pushing the
Mhm.
story. So yeah, like some people, yeah, I like the first issue because it does do that, but wait till you get to issue 2, 3, 4, 5. It just pushes the story forward
6,
again.
7, 8,
Yeah.
50.
Oh my god.
I'm sold, dude. Like I said, you totally got me, and like I said, I really enjoyed that cliffhanger, especially after doing a little research on you and you talking about the cliffhangers. I thought that was a very, again, kind of smart way to end that first issue with, again, kind of adding those little extra panels. And one coming up to my last question here, I
Mhm.
do want to ask you really quickly before we get out of here, another character that I am absolutely just in love with, Sir William. I
Oh,
love that character so much. I like it. I love how you kind of, at least for me, like kind of it subverted my expectations a little bit because like I'm thinking this guy is gonna be super Mr. Knight and all that stuff, but like he's hilarious and like that first, I forget what it was. Like, it was like his phone or something rings, and he's like, "Thou shalt kill this beast" or something. Like, I love that kind of stuff, and he's, like I said, he's hilarious. So, can you just talk a little bit about Sir William, how that kind of personality developed as you were writing that?
yeah, so like I said, the first idea was, haunted suit of armor, and this ghost is like the genie, but he's more out of time, right? Like, I feel
Mhm.
like the genie in Aladdin, he turns into like modern day things at points, if I
Yeah, he's
remember
very
correctly.
self-aware for someone who
Very
is put away for like thousands of years.
exactly, and so I was like, well, no, this guy would be totally out of time. I also really wanted to give him a dialect of some kind, like, something ridiculous. Like, I wanted him to. I, I don't know if I do it a lot in issue 1, but later, like, Andy, like, will repeat what he says. He'll be like, "We will slayeth the beast," and Andy's like, we're no slayeth the anything," Like, I like that. I like the banter between them.
Mhm.
I've probably gone way too far with how he talks. I have to admit, like,
Oh
reading
no,
it
I
back,
love
I'm like,
that. The
I think
old English stuff.
but it's so over the top. I feel I come issue 4 and 5, I start to tone it back because I think I went way too overboard. But I wanted to be fun.
Yeah.
There's very serious stuff in this. It
Mhm.
starts with a child dying, right? It's the 5th page, a child dies, and this is I wanted to make this a book that, like, people like you and me could read. Like, I could pick
Mhm.
it up and be like, "Oh, it's a cool book. It's like Stranger Things or whatever," and not feel like, "Oh, I'm reading a kid's book." Like, you pick up a Marvel, like, adventures book or whatever, it feels like a stupid, hokey, like, cheesy kids book. I
Mhm.
wanted this to be like kids could read it, and it's like serious for them, but also have some levity to it. So I really wanted there to be some comedy because you're dealing with dead kids.
Yeah, I need some
Every
levity in there.
there is dead kids, dead parent talk throughout this whole first 5 issues. So we
Yeah,
needed
I think Sir
something
Williams
fun.
definitely a much needed breath of fresh air. And I think it just adds a whole other layer to this whole, you know, the suit of armor and the relationship that Andy has not only to the armor itself, but again, Sir William and like their banter together. So I really loved the inclusion of that character, and you describing it like the genie, I think is absolutely fantastic. I was immediately thinking it reminded me of like Blue Beetle, but if Blue Beetle came with like a comedic, like a conscious with it instead of just like alien noises. So I immediately was hooked on the Sir William thing.
This I don't know if you saw, but Jeff Johns actually gave me a quote after he read the book, and he said it was like a cross between Blue Beetle and the Haunted Tank, which I didn't even know what the Haunted Tank was. I was like, what is this? And so now I'm collecting every Haunted Tank comic.
I was like, I don't know what that is either, but it sounds perfect, and I want to know all about it.
Exactly, yeah.
But last question I have for you on Armored. Again, everyone that's watching and listening to this, go pick up the first 2 issues. And I'm telling y'all, you got to keep up with this because this man knows how to write an issue, and especially an issue that makes you to want more afterwards. And my last question I have for you is, so with Armored, we've talked a lot about the themes of Armored, some of the characters and like kind of their motivations. But I want to know for readers, what do you hope that readers will kind of take away from Armored, and not necessarily take away just from readers, but we also kind of talked about, you know, adding your own voice into the comic scene, like something like that you felt was missing from either the big 2 or comics. What was that thing that, again, you wanted this book to represent and for readers to take away from it?
I really want readers. First, it was like, get your money's worth, right? There's enough story in each issue. But the second, I wanted people to have fun. Like, I feel like sometimes people like some of the books are really serious and are written like the prose is like, am I reading a novel now? All of a sudden, you know, Alan Moore. The thing is I'm never going to be Alan Moore. I'll never be Neil Gaiman. Like, those guys are masters of wordsmiths. I'm not that. And so I was like, I hope people just pick up this book and just have fun and just be like, man, I'm just having fun reading this. This is like a fun book. I look forward to reading it. And there's so many comics where I say that, where I'm like, I just can't wait to read this because it's just so fun. You know, I hope that if they get anything from it, just they can say, hey, that was fun. That was really fun ride. I feel like I didn't waste $5.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you're not going to waste your money. I will tell you that with 100% confidence. And I think it's a damn fun book, my friend. Like we talked about, there's a lot of different themes going on. And like, I'm really big, like we talked about, the mystery aspects really pull me in and all that. But it is just a fun read. Like I had so much fun reading it the first time, rereading it, preparing for this interview. And I think you got the sauce, man. I think I am fully in on 50 issues. That's for sure. If we get there, I'm pulling for it.
Can we just need to get more people reading it. This is the hardest part, is how do you convince someone to, you know, it's not an Image book. It's not a Dark Horse book. It's not a Boom book. Like, people, I think, are a little bit like, that's the first question they ask. They're like, oh, who releases it? And it's like, oh man, that really is so important. And I never thought about it because, you know, back a few years ago, I was buying Vault comics, not even knowing what Vault was. I was just buying it because, oh, that was a cool looking book.
Yep.
But it is hard. It's kind of hard if you don't have that Image logo. People are like, oh, it's not, you know, it's not verified by them or whatever. But here's the other thing, like you're telling people to read it. Like, they actually, if they're like unsure and they're like, I don't know if I'm gonna, you know, times are tight. I don't want to. I got my list. I don't want to add anything else to it. It is 5 issues is the first arc. I wrap up a lot of stuff in that first arc. And if you don't want to continue, you don't have to, but definitely check out the first 5 issues. If you're curious, you can, I think, subscribe to Clover Press's mailing list, and they'll give you the first issue for free now.
Look at that, people. Free, what? How can you not like a free comic? Like, come on now.
And if they haven't updated yet, I'm pretty sure they did. I got a text about it, I think, a couple weeks ago. If it isn't, literally DM me. I will send everyone a PDF of the first issue. I want people to check it out. Like,
I want people to check it out because, like I said, I loved it, dude. And I will tell you too. I mean, I read a lot of comic books. I do this show. I do my own show, Sons of Millionaire. I review comics. So I read a lot of books, my friend. So I will tell you all out there, I give this my seal of approval. If that means anything
thank
to you, 100% give this my seal of approval. Like I said, I read a lot of books from Big Two, Image, all the indie publishers, and this book not only stands toe to toe with all those books, but I would say blows some of those out of the water. So again, please go pick it up. Do not let the publisher steer you away. Pick up this book, DM Michael, ask him for a copy, sign up at Clover Press. I mean, there's so many ways to read this book. You have no excuse. You absolutely have no excuse. And I will be checking if y'all have read it. So again, go pick up Armored. And my friend Michael, I am so happy to have you here today. It has been absolutely so much fun. Like I said, I really enjoy this book and I'm excited to see where it's going. But that's unfortunately, we kind of have wrapped up this today's conversation. Hopefully we're going to get you back for another one. But before we get out of here, I want to throw it off to you real quick. I want you to give you a second to plug yourself, let the people know where to find you. We just talked about where you can get Clover, but I'll remind people again, cloverpress.com, you can find it. And what else is coming down the pipeline, my friend?
Okay, really quick. Clover does do beautiful books. I should mention that. Like it's just people aren't used to them doing these single issue books. But check out Clover's books. They print the beautiful stuff. As for what I have coming down the pipe, oh my God, just Armored. Just think about Armored right now. But I have another comic series I'm working on. I have like 3 different film projects I'm in the middle of. Actually, one is shooting in Ottawa right now, a horror film I co-wrote, which is a lot of fun, and a small independent horror film. And you can find me at Mike Schwartz Writes on Instagram or Threads, and the Mike Schwartz on X or Twitter. That's the best place to reach me, where I'll send you a free copy.
Absolutely. Like I said, free comics, people. What more can you ask for? And I mean, you're in high demand, my friend. You are a busy man. And again, I cannot be more thankful for you taking time out of your schedule to come and nerd out with me today, because it has been so much fun. Like I said, we're going to have to get you back on and reconvene on Armored once the 5 issues are out, because we got to talk about this first arc. But so we currently have 2 issues out. Issue 3, when do we got a date on that?
It's September, end of September. I believe it's September 18th. If we can hit the printing deadline, it'll be in September. Even if issue 3 is delayed by a couple weeks, issue 4 is still hitting in October. It might just be like within 2 weeks of the 2 issues. Basically, by November, you'll have every issue. Yeah.
Perfect. Everyone keep an eye out for that. We will be updating the description of this video with all the links that you need for Michael, for Armored, Clover Press, all that good stuff. So you don't even have to leave this video. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It really, really helps us out. Also, be sure to go subscribe to Agents of Fandom to keep up with all your entertainment news, comics, movies, TV, anything you want. We have you covered. So please, once again, make sure to go subscribe to Agents of Fandom. Michael, again, I cannot thank you so much for being here with me today. It has been so much fun. I hope you all out there enjoyed this video, and we will see you guys all next time.